Check, check. Check, check.
Check, check.
I'd like to call this council and committee meeting to order. I haven't done that in 2 years. So I got to tell you, it felt good. So this meeting has been called to order. Madam Clerk, before I go to you to do the roll call, I want to acknowledge that the land upon which we are situated here in the town of Fort Erie is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to live in our community and add to the richness of our community's life. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of council are present, your worship.
Thank you. There is one addendum, and that is the removal of Report PDS 13-2022, which I understand may be coming forward next Monday evening. I have 3 announcements, the first of which relates to a charity hockey game that was held about 10 days ago here in Fort Erie by the Fort Erie International Academy. They played a game against a team from Burlington in order to raise money for the Indigenous community and the Every Child Matters cause. And so I, along with 3 other individuals who were given pucks to drop, were given these sweaters, and I intend to incorporate this with the Every Child Matters logo on it with the display that we have in the atrium, which Councillor McDermott and I were provided last fall when there was a walk from the Native Friendship Center to the grounds outside the town hall. So that, and I understand that about $5,000 was raised as a result of that game. It was very well attended. It was over here in the JC rink, and no, it was in Crystal Ridge. Yeah, okay, Crystal Ridge rink. Very well attended. And Councillor McDermott, I don't know if you wanted to add anything. You were there.
Well, just your worship, that it was very well supported by the community, and not only that, but by business in town that have continued to sponsor events such as these. And the only thing I can add onto that is that we have plans to make this a regular event, and hopefully we'll grow this event into the LeisurePlex.
Great. Yeah, we look forward to that, and I know that they're committed to doing this again next year. It was very well organized. The second thing I wanted to make reference to is the continuing war in Ukraine. It is now into its 4th week, and some of the things that are occurring are beyond imagination. You would have had to have lived during the Second World War to see this type of devastation take place. There's been some periodic incidents of this nature in Serbia, Syria, but the continued and prolonged destruction of facilities that are housing children, pregnant women, it's hard for us to understand living in a country where there hasn't been this type of devastation ever. The last time there was war was over 200 years ago. Discounting the Fenian raid, which did result in bloodshed, but it's quite fantastic. We are flying the Ukrainian flag here at Town Hall, along with the provincial and federal flag. You'll note that on the seats that are between the councillors here this evening, we have the Ukrainian flag draped over the backs of the empty seats. Those flags here and outside will remain flying, I hope, until this war is over, and I hope that's sooner rather than later. I will be presenting a resolution later this evening, which I will be asking council to waive the rules so that we can bring it forward, and that will take place near the end of the meeting as we get to new business under corporate services. I did want to congratulate Fire Chief Ed Melanson, who received a diploma from the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario recently. It's the Executive Diploma in Municipal Management. It's a very highly sought recognition, and the Executive Diploma in Municipal Administration is the most comprehensive career development program designed specifically for Ontario's municipal managers. Graduates of this diploma program are informed leaders with a comprehensive understanding of the complex and interrelated components of municipal government. So congratulations, Fire Chief Ed Melanson. And then finally, I just wanted to mention that about a week ago, the border mayors of Ontario met with a view to urging and encouraging the federal government to discontinue any testing, any COVID testing at the border for returning or entering, or travelers entering into Canada. The border mayors had put together a statement which was being circulated and approved by all the mayors when the federal government beat us to the punch and decided to announce that they were going to remove all testing requirements for entering and returning travelers, and that is to take place on April the 1st. While we had planned to urge them to do it immediately, by the time we get to them, we didn't feel that there was much point in us quibbling over the 2 weeks, essentially, that they have in their timeline. We think that our energies can be put to better use on another initiative, whatever that might be as we go forward. So I know that, Councillor Dubanow, you've been very supportive of removing these restrictions, and I know that I had circulated a while ago the suggestion that we might bring that forward as a resolution here this evening, but this is now March the 21st. It's going to end April the 1st. So I like to think that the mere thought that the border mayors had contemplated putting something forward moved the federal government. And if that works, we'll try something else and see if we can get them to move on that too. Those are the announcements for this evening. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I have two this evening. The first is for PDS 10 2022 on the agenda. That's a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 28 Ridge Road South by Integra Incorporated. As the company I work for is currently involved in a business transaction with Integra, and that also applies to the public meeting this evening as well for 28 Ridge Road South. Same reason, the company I work for is involved in a business transaction at this time.
Okay. Were there any others? All right, so we have some upcoming public meetings. The first is a proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 10-5-40-60 Pietro Street with respect to, I don't know what that's with respect to. I guess it's going to be some type of multi-use, multi-residential property. That is scheduled, that public meeting is scheduled for April the 4th, and the information report on that will be available on our website on March the 30th. There's another proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment with respect to 7 Central Avenue and 100-1 Queen Street. That is on April the 11th, 2022, and the information report for that will be on our website on April the 6th at 5 p.m. And then finally, there's a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, public meeting scheduled for April the 11th, again, it's at 6 p.m. The information report will be available on April the 6th on our website. All those meetings are scheduled for 6 p.m. and will take place here in the council chambers. There is a public meeting this evening, and this is under the Planning Act. Statutory notice has been given. The meeting may participate via a hybrid video teleconference model for this meeting only by clicking the link which is attached to the notice. And it's on at the bottom of the agenda, correct? And I understand that the public can appear before us, Madam Clerk. So when we get to this part of the meeting, the way it is conducted is there will be a presentation by a staff member who will provide us with the background information relative to the subject matter of the public meeting, which relates to 28 Ridge Road South. There will be then an opportunity for the proponent to provide comments to council or answer any questions of council, and then I'll ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak other than the proponent in favor of the application, and anyone who may wish to speak in opposition. If you're participating digitally, then what you will do is raise your hand at the appropriate time. Depending on the type of device you have. It would either be in the top right or the bottom and middle of your device. And you'll be recognized by, I believe, Ms. Cece is monitoring this. Is that correct? Ms. Cece, you'll be monitoring this?
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship.
Yep. And Madam Clerk, is there anything further that I should be advising? Okay. And so I'll be keeping an eye on the monitor, as will Ms. Cece, in terms of anyone who wishes to participate digitally. So having said that, I'm going to ask Mr. Vanderveen to provide us with some background information. Good evening, Mr. Vanderveen.
Good evening, Your Worship, and thank you, Mayor, members of council, and any members of the public that may be attending this in person or online. I'm going to commence sharing my screen. Okay, so this is the public meeting for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 28 Ridge Road South. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for the subject property. This application intends to permit creation of a new lot intended for future development of a residential dwelling. The retained lot is also intended for future development of a residential dwelling. The zoning of the retained portion of the subject land is proposed to change from residential 2 R2 zone to a site-specific R2 zone that permits reduced lot area for the proposed new lot and reduced lot frontage. Site-specific zoning is also proposed for the new lot for a reduced lot area. Notification of the March 21st, 2022 public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in the February 22nd, 2022 edition of the Fort Erie Post newspaper. In addition, all property owners within 120 meters were mailed a notice of complete application and public meeting on February 24th, 2022. The subject property is located in the Crystal Beach neighborhood of the town of Fort Erie on the southeast corner of Thunder Bay Road and Ridge Road South. The subject property is currently vacant and was part of the phase 1 of the Bay Ridge Crossing subdivision. The following summarizes the land uses surrounding the subject property. To the north, single detached dwellings associated with the Crystal Ridge Landing subdivision. To the south, single detached dwellings. To the east, single detached dwellings associated with the Bay Ridge Crossing Phase 3 subdivision. To the west, single detached dwellings and open space that is part of the Crystal Ridge Park, owned by the town. The subject property is designated urban residential in the town's official plan. This land use designation permits single detached dwellings and creation of infill lots for the purposes of residential development. There are no natural heritage features on or in the vicinity of the subject property as identified in Schedule C, natural heritage features of the town's official plan. Similarly, there are no natural hazard areas or fish habitat as identified on Schedule C1 of the town's official plan. The subject property is currently zoned residential 2 R2 zone in the town zoning bylaw. The R2 zone requires a minimum lot frontage of 17 meters for corner lots, 15 meters lot frontage for interior lots, and a minimum lot area of 510 square meters per lot. So this is the proposal sketch submitted by the applicant. You can see the 2 lots. So the new lot proposed is part 2 to the south. The retained lot is part 1 there, irregular in shape. Again, the zoning bylaw amendment proposes to rezone the property from residential 2 zone to site-specific residential 2 zones with special provisions to permit the severance. If the zoning bylaw amendment is approved by council, a severance application will follow. So this diagram just illustrates the zoning departures. The zoning of part 1 is proposed to change from residential 2 R2 zone to a site-specific residential 2 R2 zone. Permit the following. Reduce lot frontage to 10.94 meters from 17 meters for a corner lot. Reduce lot area to 408.7 square meters from 510 square meters. The zoning of part 2 is proposed to change from residential 2 R2 zone to a site-specific R2 zone to permit the following. Reduce lot area to 425.5 square meters from 510 square meters. And just to point it out, the reduced lot frontage of part one, the retained lot, that's a result of rather large daylighting triangle that was acquired as part of the Bay Ridge Crossing subdivision when it was originally registered, and the way the town calculates frontage for an irregular lot. So we could have more discussion on that later, but I'd just like to point that out. This is an illustration of the preliminary building envelopes that were provided to us by the applicant. So the next slide will show this with the air photo, but these are the size of the dwellings on the two proposed lots. And these building envelopes also meet all of the R2 zone regulations. So this is a slide similar to the last one. It just has that preliminary plan superimposed over the air photo. Just to give council an idea of the sizing of the dwellings and the lots in relation to the existing lot fabric and dwellings nearby. This is looking south into the property from Thunder Bay Road. This is looking east from Ridge Road South. Again, the property is currently vacant. And this is looking southeast from Ridge Road South. That concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van der Veen. Do any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Just wanting to know where the driveways are.
Mr. Van der Veen, do you know where they're going to be positioning the driveways?
Yes, I'm just gonna go back to the couple previous slides. So we do have a requirement in the zoning bylaw that any new driveway has to be 7.5 meters, sorry, from the intersection. That would be approximately here. But due to the daylighting triangle, and the town also has a 1 foot reserve along this exterior side yard. So the driveway for the northernmost retained irregular lot would be located here. And the driveway of the new lot is to be confirmed, but it could be anywhere along the front of the dwelling.
Councillor Noyes.
That's all, thank you.
Any other councillors? So Mr. Van der Veen, just on that particular point, there isn't 7.5 meters of frontage where you've got the west side of that property. So is there a site-specific provision with respect to that part one?
To Mayor Redekop, I'll look into it further, but my understanding is it would be measured to where this intersection would be if the daylighting triangle wasn't there. As it measured straight over. So if it's located here, it would be beyond the 7.5 meter requirement.
It is a rather generous daylighting triangle. But I guess that's part of the subdivision agreement.
And I'd also like to point out, due to that 1 foot reserve, no driveway connection is permitted to Thunder Bay Road from the northernmost proposed lot.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Van der Veen. So at this point, if there's anyone who wishes to speak on behalf of the proponent, oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Lubberts, before I go there. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Daryl, can you go back to, I think it was slide 8. I think, yeah. Are they meeting? I'm assuming that these are the proposed building envelopes. And are they meeting the side yard setbacks?
Through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Lubberts, yes, they are meeting all of the current requirements of the R2 zone, other than, as I mentioned, lot area for both lots and reduced lot frontage for part one.
And when I was reading the report, it gave an explanation of how you calculate the, I think it was the frontage for part one. Can you explain that a little clearer?
Sure. Yeah, through Mayor Redekop to Councillor Lubberts. So because this is an irregular lot, the way the zoning bylaw specifies lot frontage to be calculated, you could actually see it here on the sketch. But basically you draw a line from the midpoint of the front lot line to the midpoint of the rear lot line. And then you measure 7.5 meters in, and you draw a line perpendicular to the line between the two midpoints. And the width of that perpendicular line, you can see it here, that's That's the lot frontage under the zoning bylaw.
And what is that measurement? Is that 10.9?
That's correct. That's 10.94 meters.
So that's why it doesn't meet the frontage?
That's correct.
Yeah? But if the triangle, the site triangle wasn't there, it would meet the, I guess it would, because it would be 20 meters.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of council? Okay. So at this stage of the game, we're going to go to the proponent, if the proponent wishes to address us, and I presume that would be digitally. Ms. Cece, is there anyone that you're aware of that wishes to come into the meeting now?
Your worship, I'm just inviting Mike Stepien, and he should be joining us shortly.
Good evening, Mr. Stepien.
Good evening.
Please proceed.
Well, I think Daryl did a great job of presenting everything up until this point. I think it's pretty well as clear as it shows in those diagrams. Yeah, the reason for applying for this, the creation of this extra lot, I just feel that it fits the neighborhood, the actual builds. You know, like part 2 will be like the property to the south. It'll have the exact same look as fitting on the lot, and from the street view, from the, you know, the curb appeal will be the, you know, identical basically. And then the corner lot, part 1, I believe it is. Again, because of like, in actual reality, when you stand there and those images looking at the lot, it's very large because you don't see the triangle in the actual landscape, right? So I feel like both of these buildings will, you know, finish off that neighborhood and be very fitting to the surrounding properties.
Thank you. I'm going to ask if there are any members of council that have any questions of Mr. Stepien. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Thank you very much, Mr. Stepien. Just one question about the size of the lots. In the original subdivision, what was the, what size were those lots? You know, do you remember?
Well, like when I purchased this lot, I noticed that it was oversized. So, you know, comparatively to the surrounding lots, it was significantly oversized, and that's where, you know, other than really being a little bit shorter because of the Thunder Bay development, it's, you know, severing like this has it in line with the rest of the R2 south of it, right?
Yeah, but do you remember the measurement, what the size of the lots were in that subdivision?
Oh, well, I could base it on the one just south of it. I'll just pull it up here. Just give me 1 second, sorry.
Yeah, take your time. Doesn't get dark till late now.
Okay. Okay, so the lot directly south, to the south, is 52.59 feet, so I'll convert that. So that's 16 meters for frontage on that one.
15?
And then 16 for the frontage. But the zoning minimum is 15, but that one sits there at 16. And then the depth is basically 106 feet, so 32 meters deep. And that's what has it a little bit deeper than my property. And again, that's because my property backs onto the Thunder Bay Road properties.
Okay, thanks. And is there any reason why I see you're trying to reduce the lot area from 408 to of 408 from 510 square meters? Is there any reason why you couldn't keep it the same?
Well, just because, again, that's where it's oversized, because it's, this is splitting the lot basically in half. And that's where it works out to the 410 as opposed to, so there's no way, and to create that other lot, this is just how it works out. And that's why it needs the minor, or the, a minor variance in that regard. But again, to me, it's sort of, it's underutilized by just having it as one large corner lot.
Councillor Lubberts?
Okay, thank you.
Any other councillors? Thank you very much, Mr. Stepien. So now at this stage, I'm going to ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak other than the applicant in support of the application. And Ms. Cece, I would ask you to monitor to see if there's anyone that raises their hand, digital hand. We have one member of the audience, and I'm going to, when you raise your hand, I'll know it's time for me to recognize you. So you're not speaking in support of the application. Okay, and she's not.
Your worship, I do see one member of the public who has their hand raised to speak in support of the application. Oh, they just put their hand down, actually.
Okay, so then I'm going to move on to anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application or to ask questions with respect to the application. Now raise your hand.
So we do have one member of the public, Ms. Gear, who I will be bringing in.
Good evening, and could we have your name and address for the record, please?
It's Bailey, and I'm at 35 Ridge Road South.
Bailey, do you have a last name?
Gear, G-E-A-R.
Okay. Please proceed.
Okay. I just wanted to question about parking as well. How many parking spots, just because there's not parking on the road here? Just how many spots are available for the residents there?
Mr. Vanderveen, can you respond to that?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Redekop. So each dwelling is required to have one on-site parking spot. I believe Mr. Stepien is planning on having attached garages for both units. But the front yard setback under the R2 zone is also 6 meters. So there's 6 meters required from the front lot line to the front of the dwelling. And the intent of that setback is to have space on the lot for on-site parking.
Ms. Gear.
Okay. What about during construction, the traffic?
Well, what's the question?
Just, I guess the question is that this corner is really congested. So during construction of these two houses, where, like, is it going to be out of the way? Is it going to interfere with the rest of us here?
That I don't know. I don't know whether you would know that, Mr. Vanderveen, but that's something that you can take up with the owner of the property. And do you know what our policy is, Mr. Vanderveen?
Thanks, Mayor Redekop. I do not off the top of my head. I'm not really involved in that part of development. However, I can touch base with our infrastructure services staff and see what the town's rules are for that type of thing during the construction process.
So just so that you're aware, Ms. Gear, what we're doing is we're holding the public meeting. Council has been provided with some background information about it. No final decision is made this evening with respect to this proposal. And your comments or your concerns are things that would be taken into account between now and when staff would come back to us with what they would call a recommendation report, which then council has to consider and make a decision as to whether to approve or not approve the application.
Okay. Lastly, I just have one quick question. Is there a ratio for the houses being built and versus the green space, like the green versus house ratio? Is there a percentage?
Well, this would be an infilling situation. If there's a subdivision, there clearly is a requirement for some type of parkland or payment in lieu of parkland so that parkland can be constructed. But for this type of situation, there wouldn't be a specific requirement. Now, I'm going to ask Mr. Vanderveen to correct me if I'm wrong, because there are occasions when I'm not completely accurate. Mr. Vanderveen.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Redekop. I do want to point out the R2 zone does have a lot coverage for dwellings requirement. And lots of the size that are proposed or retained in the new lot, the dwellings would be only allowed to cover 30% maximum lot coverage on each lot. So 70% would be driveway or open space, essentially.
So maybe that was more responsive to your question then, Ms. Gear, that there's a certain percentage of the lot that can be covered with a house, the rest is supposed to be open space.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Just
Oh,
because
okay.
when I just look out there, I find it visually difficult to picture two houses on that lot with driveways facing onto Ridge Road South.
Okay, did you have any other questions or concerns that you wanted to raise this evening?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Now, before you go, are there any members of council that had any questions of Ms. Gear? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Ceci, do you see anyone else with their hand raised to address council with respect to this matter?
Your worship, we don't have any other members of the public in attendance this
Okay.
evening in the waiting room.
In attendance, so even if I asked once more, there would be no one that is available. Is there
No,
anyone
we only
else
have
who
the-
wishes to speak in opposition or to ask questions of council with respect to this particular application? I'm looking at the audience, and the audience is smiling back. That doesn't happen very often. Okay. Before I conclude this meeting, though, I want to ask the clerk whether she has received anything since the report was prepared that she would like to add into the record.
I have not, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we're going to move on with the balance of our agenda. Thank you very much, Mr. Vanderveen. So are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? If not, then can I have a mover for the consent agenda? Councillor Zanko? Are there any questions or comments with respect to any of the reports contained? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I just wanted to make a comment in regards to CAO 04-2022, the communication update. I just wanted to congratulate the staff and commend them on the tremendous amount of work that was required over the COVID 2 years and all their communication to the public to keep everybody, not just the public, to keep us informed also was quite an accomplishment. Also, the awards that they received, very outstanding. And I'm particularly interested because I sometimes had students that the two students that came to the town and worked under our staff, both were successful in their employment, and I'm sure they learned a lot from it. So I just wanted to congratulate the staff on a job very well done.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes, and that's a great segue into the sad news that this evening is our communications advisor's final meeting as an employee of the town of Fort Erie. Janine Tesmer is going to be moving on to, I don't know if they're greener pastures, they'll be different pastures. So as I frequently do, I'm going to ignore I'm going to ignore Mr. Walsh. Because I'm sure that it will be an experience of a lifetime, and anyone that works for the region, I'm sure will agree with me. And Ms. Tesmer, I and all members of council wish you all the best in your new employment, and I look forward to the opportunity to see you periodically when I'm at the region. They do allow employees to surface, I think, once a month for a half an hour. So good luck in your new employment, and thank you for all the service that you've provided to us over the years, me in particular. Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Noyes?
Nothing further, thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question with respect to CSO2 2022-2021 Statement of Remuneration and Expenses. And as I was looking at the councillor's remuneration of $15,507, I wonder if there has ever been a recent wage survey with respect to how we compare in the region with other municipalities.
Not that I'm aware of, but I wonder if Mr. Jansen, would you have any knowledge of that?
Through you, Mayor Redekop. No, I'm not aware. If it wasn't commented in the report, I don't know when the last time it was. I know when I was looking for a similar survey that was being done by another municipality, that it was many, many years that I think we had changed any type of reference or as to the amount. So I think it has been some time.
Councillor Butler?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Is there a possibility can't even say that word, possibility to have a wage survey conducted so that there can be more recent updated information so that there can be a wholesome discussion?
So we have this report before us, and there is a recommendation in the report, and I believe you could amend the recommendations to request that staff provide a survey with respect to municipalities in Niagara, with respect to current salaries for members of councils. Did you get that, Madam Clerk? Most of it? Okay. Did you want me to take another run at it?
Did I say it? No?
Yeah, I think it would be best if you, did you get most of it, Councillor Butler?
I didn't get a chance to write it down, no, but
Okay.
I would like to amend the report to include that staff conduct a wage survey.
For members of council, yeah,
For members of council remuneration.
salaries
yes.
in Niagara?
Thanks for filling in the blanks, yes.
So I'm going to suggest that we remove this from the package, and we'll deal with it right now separately. Do we have to have a motion for that? I guess we should. Well, no, we can't, because we've got a motion to amend. Yeah. Okay, so let's take it out. And did you want to speak to that amendment? So we're going to deal with the amendment right now.
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you. I find that the salary that is currently in place for members of council is on the low side and comparative to the economies of scale that we have to contend with. So I know that in speaking with other councillors from other municipalities, we're at the very low end, and I don't think it's fair for the new councillors coming in at the new term to have to contend with the expenses that they have recognizing the fact that we can be reimbursed for expenses. But we spend, most of us spend numerous amounts of hours dedicated to the community, which is, we're not here for the money, obviously, but it would be nice to be compensated fairly for the next group that comes in.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? That is carried. And so the recommendations in the report as amended, and I just want to say that I agree with you. Any comments to the report as amended? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Any other questions with respect to any remaining reports in the consent agenda? If not, then I'll call the question on the recommendations and the remainder of the reports. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to Planning and Development Services, and so, Councillor Dubanow, you're the chair. So when I hand the chair to you, you're going to hand the chair to your vice chair for the first report. Oh, no, not the second report. I'm handing you the chair.
Thank you, Your Worship. Planning and Development Services is now in session this evening. We have no presentations or delegations this evening. However, we have two reports. First one on the agenda this evening is PDS 19-2021. That's a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 0-13365 Pettit Road. That was postponed on March 8th, April 12th, June 14th, September 13th, and January 10th, 2022 council and committee meetings, previously moved by Councillor Zanko. So that's on the floor. However, I believe we do have a memo from staff requesting another postponement until July 11th, but I'm just wondering if any members of council have questions or comments or wanted to move that. Your Worship, your hand was up?
Well, I'll wait until any other members of council. I'm going to move that it be adjourned to July the 11th, 2022.
Yeah.
Or deferred.
I don't see any of their hands up, so,
Right behind.
oh, my goodness. Yeah, we got to get used to this arrangement here. My apologies, Councillor Noyes. Go ahead.
Well, that's fine, Councillor Dubanow. I think I'm just going to get a big stick. But anyway, the question was on G on page 5 of 11. It talked about the compatibility of the commercial use with uses, and if my recall is correct, I know I was somewhat concerned about having one business basically parallel to another business. Would one affect the other negatively? And I don't know if G was supposed to, if that's what G is answering, because I don't quite read that in there. So I'm just wondering if the...
Yeah, Councillor Noyes, I think we had some discussion about obtaining some of that information, and that was the reason for postponing it. I'm wondering if Mr. Herlovich, did I pronounce your name correct? I apologize if I didn't. I'm getting used to everyone here. I'm wondering if you'd like to perhaps fill that in for Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, yes, to Councillor Noyes, to the mayor. Yes, that is one of the things that was requested, was the market study to examine that. That's the outstanding study that we're waiting for, the feasibility study to address that issue.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, because I didn't think G did, but, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if we can we ask questions about the memo as well?
Certainly, it's part of the
Yeah, all right.
recommendation.
The motion that was carried in the memo from was postponed till March 21st in order to receive the terms of reference from the environmental impact study, the feasibility study, traffic impact study, and then the planning rationale. But then the next paragraph, it just says that staff met with the applicant and their partners to discuss the requirement for submission. They only talk about the feasibility study. And the applicant has agreed to prepare the submission of a feasibility study from what I'm reading here. And the report asks for other reports. So can we get some clarification on what exactly are we getting?
Certainly, Councillor Lubberts. Mr. Hurwitz?
Yeah, through the chair to the councillor. The other reports have been satisfied, so they have done the terms of reference for the EIS. They have done their traffic report. It's the market feasibility study that we're still waiting for.
Thank you. Councillor Lubberts?
And those, they should have been available for this meeting, right? According to the motion.
Well, they are available, but we were trying to put it together as a package so that council would have all of the information at the same time in order to make a decision about moving ahead with this proposal.
Yeah, but are we not receiving this for information tonight? And then your next one, from what I understand, is going to be the recommendation report. I would prefer to have a...
No.
Is that not correct?
No, I believe the information that we've requested, which is still pending, would be part of that recommendation report when it comes up. We had the, or am I wrong? Okay.
Yeah, we've simply deferred the information report to get this additional information. For when it comes back, if all this information had been available, my understanding, and Mr. Hurlovich can correct me, my understanding is that we would have the information report with these studies that we've requested. And then we could determine what to do next. So it won't be the recommendation report that comes back with those studies. It will be the information report, which we have not yet passed.
So we'll be receiving a
Okay,
supplemental.
all right. No,
Okay,
I'm just
thank
saying
you.
that's the way I was reading it, that the next report coming is going to be a recommendation, and no, but we will get, the next one coming back is going to be
This report.
an extension of this report.
Yeah, a supplemental information report.
Okay, all right, yeah, as long as we get that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm fine with that.
I didn't see any other hands up. Your worship, you wanted to move that we postpone this?
I move that we postpone the report until July the 11th, 2022, by which time hopefully the market study will be available. If not, then it'll be, I'm going to move that it be further deferred, and I might not even want to put a date on it because, as you had pointed out before, this has been before us now for over a year.
Yeah. No, I appreciate where you're coming from, your worship. So that is now on the floor to postpone until July 11th. Are there any questions or comments with regard to timing? So I'm seeing none, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? So that passes unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Zanko, I have a conflict on PDS 10, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to take the chair for that.
Yes, thank you. I will take the chair. That brings us to PDS 10-2022, proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 28 Ridge Road South. Can I get a mover? Councillor McDermott. That report is on the floor for comments or questions. Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That carries, and I will give you the chair back.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zanko. So now we'll move on to PDS 13-2022. That is the heritage permit application for demolition of 477 Ridge Road North. Do we have a copy of the report for that on an addendum?
Your
I
worship,
apologize.
if I may, there was an addendum that deleted it from the agenda. We expect it'll come back next week.
My apologies. From what I'm looking at here, I thought we only had two, and that kind of threw me for a loop. But thank you, Madam Clerk. So we'll move on then to new business or inquiries. We do have an item of new business this evening regarding a, just looking here, it's a memorandum from Mackenzie Cece, the planning technician, regarding disposal of full marketability lands, 390 Derby Road. Is this something we vote on, or is this something that would be read by the director? Just help me out here.
Looking at me?
Or the clerk?
This motion was adjourned to this evening, and there's a memo that's attached to the motion, so technically speaking, the motion is on the floor this evening.
Okay. So we'd be voting on the memo?
We'd be voting on the motion that was brought and adjourned to tonight.
Okay.
So Mr. Jansen has his hand up.
Mr. Jansen, before I go to council, go right ahead.
Yeah, I would just want to draw council's attention to part of the memo, the last paragraph that does say that one of the matters that was raised is still outstanding at this time. And should council, that being part of the request, then that this item would be postponed until that response is available to council.
Thank you, Mr. Jansen. Okay, so then I'll go to council. Councillor Butler, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under the circumstance of receiving information, reading an article in the paper, and receiving a letter from Mr. Smith where he doesn't mind if we don't make an exception for him, I say that we allow it to go to a bid and allow this to take place in a normal fashion. So I don't know if I have to withdraw that previous motion.
So that would be the case. She would have to withdraw that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, with the approval of her seconder, Councillor McDermott.
So Councillor Butler, are you withdrawing that with the approval of your seconder?
I would like to withdraw that if
Okay.
Councillor McDermott is okay with that.
Okay. So I think that settles that if it's withdrawn. So in that case, are there any other matters of new business or inquiries anyone would like to bring up this evening? Yeah. Councillor Noyes, I did see your hand this time.
I saw that you did. Thank you. My question is basically about but developers behaving badly. I know we've had some circumstances in the Black Creek, Douglastown area where we've had fill move from one subdivision into another subdivision illegally. This is the third time this has happened, at least the third, if not the fourth time. And I don't know if people understand, the developers understand the hardship that it causes, the residents that have to look at hills again. I think this is year 10 or 12 now, where the hills have been gone for about 2 years. Now they're back. They're going to dry up. The dust is going to blow into their backyards. The seed pods are going to grow, and they're going to have their backyards full of weeds again. And again, people are going to mow around the hill, but they're not going to mow the hill. And again, they're not supposed to do this. They know they're not supposed to do this. They do it anyway. And the other problem with the sewer backups, again, I understand were caused by, I'm not the engineer, so I'm not going to say what they did, but anyway, something that they shouldn't have done. They added a fair amount of extraneous flow to the pumping station, which caused property damage in a few homes, and also the two that we know about. There was also 3 other homes that I know about that could not use their facilities for about 10 to 12 hours. Because of the sewer backup. I also know there was a fair amount of discharge that they had to bypass the pumping station because of this, and it was all because of the extraneous flow that was allowed into the system by the developer doing something he shouldn't have done, or she shouldn't have done. I'm wondering what the consequences are. How can we get these developers to comply and be accountable for what they're doing? Again, if the hill's a good example, moving the fill, this is the 3rd time that they've been caught doing it, and it's the same developer doing the same thing, and they don't really seem to care. So that's my question. How can we make them more accountable?
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. I'm wondering if this, Mr. Hurlovich wants to take this, or if Mr. Jansen does, or even Mr. Walsh, because there's a little bit of I think there's a little bit of everyone involved in this.
Thank you, Councillor, and I will start, but invite the others to join in with information they have. Certainly, excuse me, our staff is out on the roads. We do try and monitor these situations, but we really are acting primarily on a complaint-driven basis. We are aware of the subdivision that Councillor Noyes has brought up. We've had our staff out there at least on 3 occasions. They have expressed that they will be ceasing those operations. They would have needed a fill permit, an site alteration permit, in order to move the fill from one site to another. There are provisions in the subdivision agreement that does allow for some movement of fill, but this particular case it did not. I'm hoping that we have this now rectified. We certainly use our bylaw staff to go out and patrol these and look at these and send out notices as appropriate. We do have some administrative penalties in place that we have used from time to time. And we have our development coordinator who's basically in charge of site plans. So any of those site plan violations, he is just sent to investigate those as well. So we certainly try to resolve those. But yes, there seem to be some people who will test the limits, and we basically have to keep on top of them.
Thank you, Mr. Hurlovich. Councillor Noyes, does that answer your question?
Not quite. Again, and I know it's not the town's fault, but again, it's developers taking advantage of the catch me if you can attitude, and that's exactly what they're doing. I mean, like I said, it's the 3rd time they got caught and got stopped. I guess my other thought on this, the same thing, is what's going to become of the hill, the new hills now? Like, are they going to stay there? Or do they have to move the dirt back to the original subdivision? Or are the residents going to have to put up with the dirt for another, whenever they decide to move the dirt? So what's going to happen to the dirt? That shouldn't be there.
I'm wondering, I don't know if this would be information that Mr. Hurlovich would have right now. I'm wondering if perhaps we can get some information and report back to council on that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, unless you have information right now, Mr. Hurlovich, you're welcome to share what you do have. It's just, I don't know if, how much you have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say that I would rather check and make sure that what we have requested of the developer, certainly, as I say, he should have received a fill-in site alteration permit. So it would be my opinion, but I have to check that the dirt shouldn't stay there, but it does mean trucking it all the way back to where it originated. Some of it would go there anyway because it's excavation material from foundations, so some of it would go back around those foundations, but some of that other dirt has to be accommodated somewhere. Okay. So I'd like to check and report back to council.
Absolutely, I think that would be I think that would be good, Councillor Noyes. Okay.
Yes,
very
thank
good.
you.
Anything else? Okay. Councillor Zanko?
Thank you. Just further to Councillor Noyes' inquiry, I'm also curious, simply because I heard Councillor Noyes say that this developer has been warned 3 times now. I have a developer in my ward who probably has had 10 warnings on an issue. At what point do we start to issue fines? Because I think they're just going to carry on until, there is something that affects them. And I don't know, Mr. Jansen, if you wanted to take that or who wants to take that, but through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, either Mr. Hurlovich or Mr. Jansen, either one who wants to take. Okay, Mr. Hurlovich, you're standing up. Go right ahead.
I would like to be able to address that.
Absolutely.
And report back to council. Basically to get a fine, we have to have an illegal activity. We have to have proof of that. We have to then go to court. Because some of these things are just not the administrative penalties, which are easy to just hand out a ticket on site. So I need to look at a couple of those.
Certainly. Is that good, Councillor Zanko?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Your Worship.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, there's a PDS meeting next Wednesday, I believe. So I wonder if this could be part of the discussion that takes place there, so that when this comes back, council will get a more a greater response to the concerns that have been raised, because one would think that if there's a subdivision being constructed, at least in the early stages, you'd be able to move the dirt within your own subdivision as opposed to another one. And as you fill in your subdivision, there'd be less and less dirt to move around. In any event, that's perhaps something that could be discussed there. I did have two matters, though, one of which, again, is a planning matter, and that has to do with the grade elevations for infill lots. I'm confident that we've all driven around the town and seen houses, infill houses, that seem to be way higher than their neighbors. And I know that there's supposed to be swales, but sometimes it's hard to imagine that the swale is going to be effective. And I know that this was a big issue several years ago in Ridgeway, where there was a house built that was much higher than the adjacent property. And I just happened to be out yesterday, and I noticed another house, an attractive house, but it seems to be quite a bit higher than its neighbors. So I'm wondering whether the planning committee might take that on and discuss that next Wednesday as well, to see what the policy is and why it seems that some of these houses are so far higher than their neighbors. Just seems like a problem waiting to occur. And then finally, if I might, with respect to 390 Derby Road, there are now 3 parties that have expressed interest in this property, and they all seem to have differing, to some extent, views as to what is to be done. And I'm wondering whether it wouldn't be appropriate for the Land Committee, which meets this week, to perhaps consider the possibility of an RFP on this property. That is, find out what maybe the best use of this property might be and what the best price might be that the municipality can garner. Because there are 3 differing, there are 2 that would want to develop it. There's one that wants to keep it as a parking lot. There's the one that would keep it as a parking lot until they do develop it. I'm just wondering if there might be an opportunity here for us to take a greater hand than rather just say, okay, well, whoever pays the most money gets to buy the property. So I'm wondering, Chair, if the acting CAO might be prepared to comment on that.
Yeah, sure, Your Worship. Mr. Jensen.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, we do meet on Wednesday. That is something we can discuss in terms of what some of the options for developing that type of RFP would be. Can't comment much further right now, though.
It's not as if this is an urgent matter, because this property has been, sought for a decade, and first we had the parking study that we weren't going to sell this until the parking study was done, and we weren't going to sell it until the Crystal Beach secondary plan was done. Well, those are all done now, and the property isn't going down in value. If anything, it's going up in value. Okay, thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Your Worship. I actually think that's a novel idea with the interest on that property. And I think I did see Mr. Hurlovich taking notes for our PDS meeting we have coming up for that other issue. So I think we're good. Any other members of council have any questions or any new business or inquiries? So I'm seeing none. Any questions regarding the business status report?
That's a busy business status report.
They always are. That's what happens in a growing municipality, I would expect. But I'm going to take a look. Yeah. April 4th and 11th look like very busy days. Any other questions or comments? All right, Your Worship, I will... I'll hand the chair back to you. Planning and Development Services closed for the evening.
Thank you very much, Chair. That takes us to Infrastructure Services. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Infrastructure Services is now in session. We have no presentations or delegations, and we have one report, IS 07-2022, proposed beach facility access and parking process. Do I have a mover? Mayor Redekop. Any comments or questions? Mayor Redekop,
Yeah, I just want to
Councillor
confirm,
Dubanow, and Councillor Noyes.
if I might, we do get the HST back, do we not? We do get the HST back, do we not?
Jonathan, I guess, yeah.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just with regard to the capacity limit that's being set on the beach, I'm just wondering if this is something that we're going to monitor as we transition out of COVID, as people feel, more comfortable in more crowded situations, if there may be an opportunity to have, perhaps some more people enjoy the beach based on availability. I'm just wondering if this is something we're going to keep an active eye on.
Mr. Walsh? You need to get wired up for that?
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Chair. Right now, the proposed limit is based on our positive experiences over the past couple of years within COVID. That's our plan to keep it like that. We're going to run this year. As we do every year, we'll bring back a report in the fall and let council know how it went, make recommendations on that. But if I had my hunch right now, that's the way it's going to stay for the foreseeable future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. My comment is about the charge for the non-residents, increasing to $10 on the peak days, and I fully support that. But I'm just wondering what the age is. I think we had a child's age that, okay, if you're a certain age, you didn't have to pay it. If you were and over that age, you did have to pay it. I'm just wondering what that age was. I think it was 10?
Yes, I think so. Mr. Walsh?
10 and under.
Under 10, right?
10 and under.
10 and under. So almost 11 and under.
Under 11.
Yeah. All right, okay.
So I would think that perhaps since we're increasing, basically doubling the charge for non-residents, that perhaps we look at that age and maybe say 12 and under. I see people shaking their heads. I just think, for a family of 4 with 2 kids that are under 12, that's a good thing, as opposed to under 10. I just think the 2 years would help.
Mr. Walsh, what do you think? Want to comment on that?
I think I'll leave this up to council. I think the original proposition was a wish of council as well. So I'll leave that up to you for now.
Okay, thanks. You put the pressure on us again. Okay, Councillor Noyes, pressure's back on you.
Well, I just, I would suggest that the age be 12 and under, not 10 and under.
Would you like to make a motion to that?
Sure, I'll make a motion that the age for those non-residents who are not paying or are paying, that it be 12, that the age be 12 and under, not 10 and under.
Yeah, okay, that motion's on the floor. Councillor Butler, would you like to speak to it, or can I just go to Mayor Redekop?
Council committee.
Mayor Redekop?
Yeah, I'm not going to support that, and I'll tell you why. It's very simple. We're going to have residents who are 12 who are going to have to pay, and we're going to have non-residents who are 12 who don't. And to me, that doesn't make any sense, actually. I understand that 12-year-olds likely from out of town aren't going to be coming here by themselves without having their parents accompany them, but I think it's preferable to have a uniform policy. There's a clear distinction between resident, non-resident in terms of how much you pay, but you're paying regardless. And there's a clear cutoff point as to when you have to start paying, and that's 11 years and up. So I would prefer to stick with the 11 and up pays.
Anybody else? Yeah, Councillor Noyes?
Thank you. And I agree that there should be some continuity in regards to that. I didn't realize that the children over 10 were paying. I thought most families would get the season pass. So that wouldn't be applying, but I would say, yes, if you want uniformity, I would say then 12 and under, whether you're a resident or non-resident, be the cutoff. But again, I think most residents are going to be getting season passes, so it doesn't apply to family.
Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I happen to agree with Councillor Noyes on this. I think that everything is so expensive and there are a few things that are free anymore. And if we can help families to enjoy, the area and enjoy the park, then I'm all for that. So I support this.
Anybody else? Councillor Dubanow, Councillor Zanko, you got your hand up too? Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm generally supportive of this idea as long as there's alignment between resident and non-resident. I'm just wondering if council does decide to raise that age limit, if this can be included in the report at the end of the year to determine, if there's any difference relative to what we've seen for previous years for revenue. I know it's not going to be a clear-cut picture, but I'm just wondering if that's something perhaps we could look into just when the report comes up.
Mr. Walsh, you want to comment on that?
Thank you. We'll try to track that. I can't make any promises on that because we don't actually keep track of passes under 12. We do keep track of attendance, though, at the beach.
Councillor Zanko?
Thank you. My concern is just not knowing what the impact is, but knowing that we have to collect a certain amount in order to cover our costs. So, Mr. Walsh, through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Walsh, in your opinion, would you think, based on all of the information in previous years, would you think it would have a substantial financial impact if we increased the age limit to 12?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the finances, both within COVID and outside of COVID, the 1 year we operated without COVID, our revenues were substantially more than we expected. So I think bringing the age from 10 to 12 will not make a substantial difference. It will make a little bit of a hit, but materially, no.
Thank you.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you. I think, too, it'll perhaps do the opposite, actually increase. If you had children that you might come more often with your kids, if they didn't have to pay $10 each if you're a non-resident. I think it might actually work the opposite way. It will actually increase the revenue because they may come more often.
Any other comments? Councillor Zanko?
So just so I understand the amendment, is the amendment now to increase for residents and non-residents to the age of 12? So it's consistent?
Is that what you're asking for, Councillor Noyes?
Yes, it is.
So
let's hear what the amendment is.
yeah, because we just need to verify that it will be children under 12. Is that what you're not 12? 12 and under, right, under 12. We got to make sure we got it right.
No, 12 and under.
So it'll be almost 13. No, well, that's another age. It's another year, right?
Yes, but those children who are 12 would also not have to pay. So it's 12 and under.
That's what you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Everybody's clear with that? Mr. Walsh? We'll see how we make out all those in favor. None opposed. Mr. Walsh, you have your marching orders. Almost 13.
Did you vote on the rest of the report yet?
Pardon me?
Did you vote on the rest of the report yet?
No.
Okay.
No, I got a question. Any other questions on the report? Okay, I got just one question. The purpose of the report, it goes on, it says that it's a 5-year contract for $341,000 plus But then it goes, the initial term of the contract was for 3 years. So the 341,000 is for 5 years or 3 years?
One moment, please.
Yeah, first paragraph in the report, page 2.
Mr. Chair, so that is the 3-year cost.
Wow.
Cost.
I
HST.
don't know if I can, what were the other prices?
No, sorry, my apologies. The mayor's correct. It is the 5-year cost. The 3-year cost is 194,000 without HST. The other submission did not meet our technical requirements, so we did not open the cost on.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, no, for 5 years, I'm okay, because that's like, what, 60-some thousand a year, which is,
Yeah.
but 100,000 a year, I don't think I would be, but that's good. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any other comments, any other questions? Seeing none. Then I'll call the question on the report as amended, right? Any comments or questions? All those in favor? None opposed, that's carried. New business inquiries. Councillor Butler, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions. The first one is that I received an email with respect to the state of Bernard Beach and the boardwalk itself. I know that Mr. Walsh and his department have been on this, but since that email, I received a slew of more. So I'm hoping that perhaps he can just address that tonight so that it is in the public realm.
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as council is likely aware, the new boardwalk we built at Bernard Beach last summer was destroyed in, I think it was the December storm, despite design parameters within the boardwalk that allowed us to remove sections. The remaining sections got heavily damaged. So we met with the designer 3 weeks ago down at the beach. We've come up with a plan for a modified reconstruction of the boardwalk down there that will allow us to provide greater resiliency for the boardwalk in the future. We're going to make more of the sections removable, and then the one section that is not removable will have better anchorage in it that we hope will meet the requirements of the community and the storms we're experiencing down there. This is unbudgeted right now. The storms occurred after the 2023 budgets were set, so when we're prepared to go to tender, we'll be bringing a report forward for additional funding on that.
Thank you, Councillor Butler.
Yeah, no, that was really great information. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I do have a second question, and the second question actually is more of a follow-up with respect to what the mayor had said in the planning and development portion, where people are building up and residents that have their homes already in place are experiencing flooding as a direct result. But there is one area that I have been after for the last 7 years. And I know that your team was going to address this in December, but I did receive a call on Bernard and Dominion Road, and that still hasn't been done. I wonder if you know of a time frame for that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll look into that and get back to you.
Mr. Chair, that was it. Thank you.
Any other? Councillor Noyes and Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. My question is regarding, we did get a report or a letter in regards to the sewer backup in Black Creek and Douglastown, that there was going to be an investigation, that the staff are looking into it. And I'm just wondering if when this investigation is complete, or they're looking into the extraneous flow, the cause of it, whether we can get a report on exactly what they found.
Mr. Walsh?
We can do that. Would you like a formal administration report, or is a memo through the agenda sufficient, or an email form of report?
Councillor Noyes? Would a response to an inquiry be good?
Yes, that would be fine.
Yeah. And Councillor Zanko, are you done, Councillor Noyes? Yeah, okay, Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Walsh. I'm wondering if we have any equipment to clean off the Friendship Trail. The reason why I ask, if anybody has been down the Friendship Trail recently, it's disgusting. It's very disappointing that dog owners are not picking up after themselves. It's hard to not step in a mess. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I don't know if residents think that it will wash away on its own, but it certainly isn't. I'm wondering if there's any type of cleanup that can be done once a year before spring.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we don't own equipment, but I'm sure we can source some, such as a power sprayer for sidewalks or something like that, that we can push everything off to the side.
Okay. Is that something that I would have to bring forward a motion on?
Let me look into the costs, and I'll get back to council on that, and speak with our acting CAO/treasurer, and see where we go from there.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other inquiries? Seeing none. Business status report. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. Mayor Redekop, I'll turn the chair back over to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lubberts. That takes us then to Corporate and Community Services. Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Corporate Community Services is now in session. We have no presentations and no delegations. We have no reports. New business inquiries. Councillor Zanko.
Thank you. Through you to, I guess, Mr. Jansen, this question would go towards. I'm actually inquiring with regard to the reinstatement of previous non-COVID policy regarding meetings, in-person meetings, not allowing residents to participate in public meetings via Zoom anymore, not allowing staff to participate in council meetings via Zoom, and same thing with councillors. I don't understand the reasoning behind this. I think that today's climate is all about hybrid. I don't see really a purpose for, staff even to be here until 10 o'clock at night when they can certainly log in from home. So I know there was discussion on this and the extension of the mask mandate, which, I don't agree with already, but we've already talked about that. I'm just wondering what the reasoning was behind not allowing any hybrid model.
Mr. Jansen.
Yeah, through you, Chair, to Councillor Zanko. This is a case where we have reverted back to the existing council bylaw and guidance on this. I'm just trying to bring it up right now. I think it's included within our rules of procedures, and the clerk can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are provisions in there for some scenarios where hybrid would be allowed. It covers certain areas such as inclement weather, I think illness, and a few other areas where council's notified in advance. That is something that staff could report back on if council's interested in looking at changes to that. But that was the intent, and the discussion we had was that following the end of the state of emergency, we would revert back to our regular rules and procedures for council gathering.
Okay, thank you. I think, especially if we're trying to engage the public, I think allowing them to participate in public meetings via Zoom is just today's world. So I would really appreciate a report back because I am fully prepared to make a motion to change that. I just think it's fair to everyone. But I will wait for that until the report comes back.
Your worship.
Yeah, I think there, unless council directs staff, they won't be preparing a report, so you might want to move that next Monday, and that'll give staff a heads up on it. I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, we should be taking the opportunity to take advantage of the technology that's available. But as the acting CAO has said, it simply reverted to what was in existence beforehand, so it would require a policy change. If I have the floor, I wonder if I could ask council to agree to waive the rules of procedure so that I can bring a motion this evening to present a resolution with respect to Ukraine.
Council, all in favor of waiving the rules of procedure? Carry on, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Chair. Whereas Ukraine is a sovereign nation with a democratically elected government, and whereas Ukraine is a member of the United Nations and a part of the international community that is governed by the rule of law, and whereas Canada has a long history of welcoming immigrants from Ukraine who have helped to build our nation in many ways, and whereas Ukraine has been invaded without justification by Russia in direct violation of international law and the Charter of the United Nations, and whereas Russia has committed what can be described as war crimes and crimes against humanity by its indiscriminate bombing of civilian populations and health facilities and its breach of ceasefires for humanitarian evacuations, and whereas the town of Fort Erie stands with the people of Ukraine, those of Ukrainian descent across Canada and those around the world, in strongly condemning the naked aggression, destruction, and lawlessness of Russia in its unprovoked attack on Ukraine. And whereas the town of Fort Erie stands for peace, the rule of law, and international order, now therefore be it resolved that the town of Fort Erie supports the government of Canada's imposition of stringent economic and travel sanctions imposed on Russia and designated Russian citizens, and joins the international call for the immediate cessation of all military activity in favor of the pursuit of a diplomatic resolution to the conflict. And be it further resolved that the town of Fort Erie calls on the government of Canada to welcome to our country with open arms those fleeing the conflict in Ukraine. And be it further resolved that the council of the town of Fort Erie encourages our residents to be generous in providing what assistance they can to Ukraine and its people through donations to major international or Ukrainian charitable organizations. And be it further resolved that the town of Fort Erie fly the flag of Ukraine at Town Hall as a show of solidarity with the people of Ukraine until the current conflict ends. Chair, may I just very briefly speak to that?
Absolutely.
These are the types of resolutions that are being introduced across Canada at municipal councils everywhere. A number have been presented at councils in Niagara. Canada has a long historical connection with Ukraine, as the resolution points out. Much of Western Canada was opened up by Ukrainian immigrants, many who escaped after the First World War, some who came before that, many who came between the two world wars or after the Second World War. And the Ukrainian people have a long, long history. I saw a picture on the television, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, of a beautiful Ukrainian Orthodox church built around the time that the Muscovites were still living in huts. And so it's rather curious to hear the president of Russia talk about Ukraine not having its own history or not having its own heritage or culture. Of course they have a long-standing, vibrant history and culture. Many of the prominent people in the world today are Ukrainians or are of Ukrainian descent. And it's hard to imagine that in this world that we live in, that the things that are happening now in Ukraine, the destruction, the death, the apparent intent to destroy a culture is taking place. And so I ask council to support this resolution, and I hope that the people of Fort Erie, and I know that many are doing what they can. It's very difficult for us to do very much, but we can support our government in supporting Ukraine. We can support the Ukrainian people by doing what we can, and we can show our solidarity by flying the Ukrainian flag and keeping these flags here until this conflict ends. And hopefully that will be sooner rather than later, because it's abysmal what is occurring. And I'll stop there.
Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think His Worship probably is not surprised that I'm going to speak. My father is a refugee to Canada. He is, and his parents are of Eastern Ukrainian descent, so they are that interesting part of the country where they have ties to Russia, they have ties to the Ukraine, they speak Ukrainian, they speak Russian. My dad also understands Polish and numerous other languages, which when you're from that part of the world, you kind of all mix in together. And it's very unfortunate that this is happening because, as the mayor said, Ukraine has a very rich culture. They've contributed tremendously to the history of Canada, particularly Western Canada, parts here in Southern Ontario. I'm here because of Ukraine. The one thing that I want to mention, going back to the point about how Ukrainians and Russians have, for better or worse, are very tied together. Depending on who you ask, they might disagree, and others might say otherwise. I just want to remind everyone that the Russians who are out there, they are not Vladimir Putin. They are not an oligarch. They are just like Ukrainians. They want this war to end. They want this conflict to end. And I, as someone who is, part of both of those cultures, I just want to point out, don't take this out on the person running the Russian bakery. Don't take it out on Russian cosmonauts who have history. Russian composers. Russia has a very rich culture of its own, and it's just not fair to blame them for what a despot that they have running their country right now is doing. They want this to end just as much as Ukraine does. And I just wanted to point that out there. I would like nothing more for this to end. And thank you, Your Worship, for bringing this forward, and I will very happily support this.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Anything on the business status report? Seeing none, back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. Scheduling of meetings. Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you. On March 23rd, there's a Fort Erie not-for-profit housing meeting on King Street in the Common Room. On March 29th, there's the Accessibility Committee at 4 o'clock in Room 1, Committee Room 1.
Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., we have a Healthcare Services Advisory Committee here at meeting here at Town Hall. And on Wednesday, March 23rd at 5:30, the Community Gaming Development Corporation Board of Directors will be meeting here at Town Hall as well.
Anyone else? Then Councillor Dubanow, would you be good enough to move that we adjourn?
Absolutely, Your Worship. I'd like to move that Council and Committee adjourn at 7:34 p.m.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all.